Why did the Trump shooter do it? Well, I think that there are some interesting things that we can point out that probably are the reason why he did it, although we don't have an official reason yet. I'm sure it's coming. But I do think that there are some observations that can be noted here. Yesterday, I did a video talking about the shooter and what we know about him so far. It seems to really have struck a chord. It did really well. And it also addressed a lot of fake news that is out there concerning the identity of the shooter. And so I figured that we would spend a little bit more time on the shooter and perhaps their motives for doing this in light of some things that we've seen going on in politics and in the news lately. So we've seen constant rhetoric against Trump. Now, it goes both ways. We've also seen a lot of rhetoric against Biden. It's a two-way street. But a lot of rhetoric against Trump, specifically labeling him a dictator and saying that he is another Hitler. I mean, we see this everywhere, incredibly widespread. We see Biden explicitly saying, if Trump is elected again, this is the end of democracy. We saw even Robert De Niro come out not long ago. And in his little speech, he wants to say, look, if this guy is elected, democracy is over. The Constitution is over. So we hear this rhetoric pretty often, but also the claim that he's another Hitler. That's a really popular one. Now, think about this for a second. If you could go back in time and you could take out Hitler before he did all of the horrible things that he did, would you do it? Would you take him out? If you had a gun, you got him in sight, and you can take him out before he committed all of the horrible acts that he committed, would you do it? Now, even if you personally say, I wouldn't do it, let's say you're one of those people, you're bound to know that there's a lot of other people would say, actually, I would do it. I would take them out, right? There's plenty of people in the world who would say that. So what do you expect if one candidate is constantly being compared to Hitler? Sooner or later, somebody is going to take that seriously and say, you know what? In the same way that I would have taken Hitler out before they did what they did, I'm going to do the same thing here, and I'm going to change history, and I'm not going to allow him to be another Hitler, and I'm not going to allow him to be a dictator, and I'm not going to allow him to throw out the Constitution. I'm going to stop it before it happens. There's plenty of people that think that way. So in reality, it's a little surprising that this hasn't already happened, that there aren't other people out there who have already attempted to take Trump's life. But is this one of the main motives for why we saw this attempt on Trump's life? Most likely. Because again, if we're in an environment where you constantly have this rhetoric, it's only going to be a matter of time before somebody tries to do something about it. And this rhetoric goes, it covers pretty much every circle, but it especially goes back to Biden himself explicitly telling people on video, if, Trump is elected, you're going to have the end of democracy. So it's only a matter of time before somebody takes him up on that. Let me fix my camera here. It's overheating. Got some tech issues here. Had audio issues earlier, now video. It is 87 degrees in here right now. So this is even with the AC going. So this is usually when it kicks out. Anyways, let's get back to it. So it's only a matter of time before somebody really acts on the situation if they really believe what Biden is saying. So if democracy really is going to end with Trump, I mean, sooner or later somebody is going to try to take him out. I want to actually show some clips where you can see this point being made by others. I think it's worth noting. Let me show you Sean Spicer, former White House press secretary, where he notes this as well. So this is certainly not a point or observation that is unique to me. Let me share my screen so you can see it. And let's watch it together. Short clip here. All right.
I'm not, I've said from the jump that violence never has a place, but it's the left that turned the rhetoric up. And now they're the ones that are telling we all need to take it down. And I appreciate all their comments, Andrew, but at the end of the day, the one thing that's lacking in any of this is for all the judgment they have in the other direction. I haven't heard anyone take responsibility for their actions or their words today and saying, I'm part of the problem on the left. I need to do it. They all say we all need to do it as if we are all part of the problem. They need to take more responsibility for themselves, though.
See, yeah, I agree with that because I'm hearing people say, "Hey, let's tone things down, let's cool things down." But however helpful that may be, in reality, there's some accountability here from the side that has been turning the heat up by saying that Trump is another Hitler, Trump is a dictator, and again, it goes all the way up to Biden himself. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of accountability here. So I'll point that out. Let's also take a look at what MSNBC says concerning this rhetoric. Now, this actually comes from a clip from the Ben Shapiro show where he pointed this out as well. So let me share my screen and you can follow along with what MSNBC says concerning this rhetoric.
Let's deal with Hitler, okay?
I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that. I mean, that is Mussolini, Hitler-like language.
So you saw MSNBC is doing it, CNN is doing it.
Trump's affinity for Hitler was always covered under an umbrella of his stupidity.
Echoing Hitler's words.
Listen to this. Well, Hitler was duly elected.
That's right. Echoing the hate.
See that? Fox News. You have Hillary Clinton saying that there with Fox News. Now MSNBC again.
Full rhetoric of Adolf Hitler.
I refuse to live under Donald Trump's reign again. I refuse to risk our democracy.
What would a second Trump term in the White House mean for the rule of law in our country?
It would be the end of democracy.
Anybody that votes Republican and doesn't understand you're voting for the end of democracy.
That's the kind of language Hitler used in Mein Kampf.
About vermin and Hitler and Mussolini. That's a horrifying clip. That's a fascist clip. Just going full on Hitler.
If Trump wins, it would be the end of democracy in the United States.
No, that's just a short compilation. There's many other examples, but you can clearly see it's the critics of Trump who've been turning up the heat. Now, Trump has a whole lot of faults, and there's a lot to criticize about him. But saying that he's a Hitler or that if he's elected, this is the end of democracy is certainly exaggerated, and it is turning up the heat to a point that it's only a matter of time before somebody is going to take this seriously and end up doing something about him. Because again, if you could go back in time and you could take out Hitler before he did what he did, would you do it? Again, even if you say, no, I personally wouldn't do it. Okay, maybe you wouldn't. There's a lot of people out there who would, though. And so that's the issue. And there's a lot of people in the world today who would do it. And if they're being told, here's a new Hitler. So how did this not happen sooner? That's really kind of the question here. Now, I also want to take a look at this clip from CNN, oddly enough, blaming Trump and then saying that it is he who is turning up the heat and making things more rhetorical right after he got shot. I mean, the gaslighting here. Watch this brief clip that we need to explore together.
I say there was one thing that when I watched the tape, I found odd because of all of the heated rhetoric. And that is that after he was hit, former President Trump got up and said, fight, fight, fight. I think what we're hearing from people is that's not the message that we want to be sending right now. We want to tamp it down.
Yeah, I would just know one thing on this, kind of to that point.
This is what we call gaslighting, and I appreciated Ben Shapiro's commentary. I don't always agree with him, but I think that he was spot on that particular point. That comes from a clip from the Daily Wire showing what CNN was saying. Look, perhaps he could do some things better. That is Trump. But right after getting shot, getting up and saying, fight, fight, fight. I'm sorry. It's not him turning up the heat. It's the guy who just tried to murder him and did murder somebody else. That's the guy turning up the heat. And that's where the focus needs to be. Not, well, he came, he stood up and he said, fight, fight, fight. First of all, I don't think that that's inappropriate. I think that that was fitting. We should fight against this nonsense. We should fight against people who are trying to murder people. That's certainly something that we should do. And I think his point was to basically say we should fight for democracy. And so, yeah, there's some truth there. I don't think that's the issue, though. The issue is the guy was almost murdered right before us. And we should be talking about that and talking about what led to this, who turned up the heat that would have caused this situation, not how did Trump respond. Well, look, let's see how well you respond after somebody almost murders you. Let's see what you say. Should we perform an experiment and have somebody come to you and try to murder you? And then let's see how well you handle that situation. Again, this is gaslighting. And it's certainly not accepting accountability. And CNN, among others, have a great deal of accountability here that they need to own up to. So this is certainly concerning. Now, I want to briefly talk about security and how this happened. One of my first reactions was, how in the world did this happen? I mean, think about it for a second. So you got a guy on top of a building with a rifle. He had to get there with a rifle. So how does this happen? You're at a Trump rally and you walk in there with a rifle. I assume that there's like some kind of case to it and nobody notices. Or you're near the Trump rally. I mean, technically he's not inside it, but you're in an adjacent building and you walk up with some kind of large case that I'm sure conspicuously looks like you're holding a sniper rifle and nobody notices. How does this happen? Why weren't there drones in the area, checking out all the buildings? Why weren't there people actually on that building securing the premises? At an adjacent rally, there was plenty of security. So what happened here? How does this even happen? Certainly, there's a massive failure here from a security standpoint. And this was one of the things that I pointed out from day one of this happening. But we're starting to see some theories circulating. The Telegraph has an article here called Diversity Hire. The Secret Service blamed for Trump shooting security failings. And so they're effectively saying, well, it's actually because of a diversity hire that there's some issues here. The diversity hire is going to be, figures like this person right here, who in some videos appears to be struggling to holster her gun. By the way, I did watch the video a couple of times, and And the more I look at it, actually, I don't think she was struggling to holster her gun. I think she was struggling to get the gun out. That was part of the problem. She was struggling to get it out. She finally got it out. And then whenever she tries to holster it, she was able to. But be that as it may, people are saying, hey, there's a diversity hire issue here. And that is probably the reason for some security failings. They say a Republican congressman has called the United States Secret Service chief a diversity hire as he blamed a drive to recruit more female agents for securing security failings around the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Tim Burchett pointed that the director of Secret Service wants more non white and female agents, but is now facing calls to resign. The agency has the goal of increasing the number of women to 30% by 2030, but critics claim females make less effective agents than men. Well, let's just say that you have an effective female agent. Let's just say that you have that. Okay. Well, what happens if you can't actually get that 30%? Let's say among the applicants, you can't actually meet that quota. Are we going to now lower standards just to meet a diversity goal? Some are going to have that concern. Right-wing commentators have zeroed in on widely shared online footage of a female agent's apparent struggles to holster her weapon after the shooting in Pennsylvania on Saturday. It is a kind of a comical scene. I mean, obviously, the whole situation is tragic, but the struggling to try to holster the weapon is sort of comical. Although, again, looking at the footage, I don't know if she was struggling to holster the weapon as much as it appeared that she was struggling to get her weapon out. Be that as it may, certainly the issue of the goal of trying to get 30% women in the Secret Service by 2030 could be an issue, because what if the applicants are not up to par? Are we going to lower the standards to meet that diversity goal? Others claim the female agents in the presidential candidate's security detail were too short to properly shield Mr. Trump, who is 6'3". Mr. Burchett singled out the Secret Service's adoption of DEI, an acronym for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Somebody really dropped the ball. You've got a DEI person, a DEI initiative person who heads up our Secret Service. So certainly she is coming under fire, and it's interesting to see maybe what's going to happen with this. I think Elon Musk pointed this next part out as well. You know, she was working at Pepsi before this, so Elon Musk kind of joked. She was previously in charge of guarding and securing Cheeto bags effectively. I know she was a former CIA Secret Service agent, but still, this is what happens when you don't put the best players in. Is that the reason for issues with security that day? Maybe. Maybe. I certainly want to point out what this person from Fox News has said. This is Nicole Parker, who is a former FBI special agent. Here is some commentary that she offers on the failure of security for that day. Okay, point well made. I think that that's actually really, really helpful. I do think that, well, actually, somebody's saying no sound. I don't know why it wasn't playing. Let's try it one more time. And by the way, let me grab this super chat too um, before I replay that clip. It was actually a really good point that she made, so I don't want y'all to miss that. But here's a quick question. Hello from Chile. I can't find anything official on the internet where FBI actually gave Crooks' name. Why does everyone avoid Maxwell? Right. I did a whole show on this yesterday, giving you in detail where this came from the FBI as well as the Maxwell issue. So go and watch the video. It is already in the show notes to this video. Thank you for that super chat. All right, let's get back to the topic here. Somebody says that we couldn't hear it, so let's try it one more time. Around the 3 minute, 30-second mark is where we're going to start from this interview with Nicole Parker, former FBI special agent. Here we go.
And she has this plan in place. It's very well known. You know, by 2030, she wants 30% of, female staff at the Secret Service. Maria, why should that matter? We should be focused on protecting. That is the job of the Secret Service. Anything else is a distraction. Any of this diversity, equity, inclusion, any of this, it's a distraction from the true mission. And I saw the same exact thing at the FBI, unfortunately. I started to wonder, am I working for a social justice warrior club or am I working for the FBI? And I've heard that the Secret Service is even worse than the FBI in that regard. We were getting constant emails about every diversity club under the sun. That is not your job. When you are coming in as a federal agent, you are coming to protect and to serve the American people. And if that's the case, it is wrong. They should be spending the money being spent on the diversity programs. Why don't you spend that money on advancing your technology, getting some drones? Some drones could have prevented the entire fiasco and potential tragedy of losing a former president. But its focus is somewhere else, and it's just not right.
Yeah, so this is actually really helpful observation. Look, hey, there's nothing wrong with diversity, but whenever we are lowering standards to meet diversity quotas, that's where we have an issue. Now, again, all other things being equal, sure, let's have some diversity. There's nothing wrong with that, but you cannot make diversity number one. What you need to do is you need to address who is the most suitable candidate for the position. Then we can talk about other factors like diversifying the workspace. Trying to place diversity at the top is just not helpful. And we're starting to see where it impacts real people in very critical ways. And perhaps this is one of them. I'm certainly interested in hearing what y'all think. If y'all don't think this is a diversity issue, that the security issue is a result of something else, not a lowering of standards for the sake of diversity, hey, I'm willing to hear it out. I would like to know what y'all think about it, so certainly let me know. So let's also talk about Biden's address to the nation. I want to pull that up and show you what he said, and it's not very long, so we're going to watch the whole thing. And I do want to point out, he points out things like, we should lower the temperature now. But I want to say, but Biden, you're kind of responsible for raising the temperature. You're one of those guys who has said, even in video, that if Trump is elected, that is the end of democracy. It's only a matter of time before somebody takes that seriously and ends up trying to take Trump's life. All right, so let's see what he says. I'm going to share my screen, make sure that y'all can hear it. And let's watch it together. It's not very long.
Fellow Americans, we must stand together. Yesterday's shooting at Donald Trump's rally in Pennsylvania calls on all of us to take a step back. Take stock of where we are, how we go forward from here. Thankfully, former Trump is not seriously injured.
Former Trump. Hey, look, I make mistakes when I speak as well. I get it. But first of all, I'm not the president of the United States. Second of all, it's excessive. It's nearly every other sentence at this point. Former Trump? What?
Spoke with him last night. I'm grateful. He's doing well, and Jill and I keep him and his family in our prayers. We also extend our deepest condolences to the family of the victims who was killed. Corey was a husband, a father, a volunteer firefighter, a hero, sheltering his family from those bullets. We should all hold his family and all those injured in our prayers. Earlier today, I spoke about an ongoing investigation. We do not know the motive of the shooter yet. We don't know his opinions or affiliations.
Well, I think we do know the motives, at least generally speaking, right? I think that we do know that. Maybe some details and specifics, sure, some of that remains to be explored, but I think we can surmise what the motives here were.
We don't know whether he had help or support, or if he communicated with anyone else.
Well, we do know that they found bomb-making material in his vehicle and that his father purchased the sniper rifle. We do know that much information. And yeah.
Law enforcement professionals, as I speak, are investigating those questions. Tonight, I want to speak to what we do know. A former president was shot, an American citizen killed, while simply exercising his freedom to support the candidate of his choosing. We cannot, we must not go down this road in America. We've traveled it before throughout our history. Violence has never been the answer. Whether it's with members of Congress of both parties being targeted and shot, or a violent mob attacking the Capitol on January 6th, or a brutal attack on the spouse of former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, or information and intimidation.
Let me pause there. You heard the January 6th comment. And people are going to say, but Trump said some things prior to that that really incited the riot. I look back and listen to what he said, and I can certainly see people could put a spin on what he was saying and take him literally and then go and storm the White House because of that. But you could also certainly interpret him as being rhetorical in nature. So it kind of depends on how you're interpreting him there. Is he being literal, rhetorical? Well, can't we say the same for Joe Biden at this point? When he wants to say, look, if this guy is elected, that is the end of democracy. And so Trump is now, in the bullseye. We need to put him in the bullseye, stuff like that, comments like that. Sure, some people could interpret that rhetorically, but some people could also interpret that literally and then go and put Trump in the crosshairs. Right? So it's a two-way street. If what Trump did is responsible for January 6th, as Biden is certainly suggesting here and has explicitly said elsewhere, is Biden responsible for the shooting? Well, by that standard, yes. If you hold Biden to his own standard that he holds Trump to, he is then responsible for the shooting. But if you want to give him grace and say, no, he's not talking about literal bullseye that we need to put Trump in. If you say, it's rhetorical. Okay. But why didn't you do that with Trump? We're not being consistent.
On election officials, or the kidnapping plot against the sitting governor, or an attempted assassination on Donald Trump. There is no place in America for this kind of violence, or for any violence ever. Period. No exceptions. We can't allow this violence to be normalized. The political record in this country has gotten very heated. It's time to cool it down.
Okay, yeah. Hey, I'm all in favor of that. I'm not opposed to cooling things down. I think that's a good idea. But I think we need to acknowledge our own behavior that has turned up the heat here. And he's not doing that.
We all have a responsibility to do that. Yes, we have deeply felt strong disagreements. The stakes in this election are enormously high. I've said it many times that the choice in this election we make in this election is going to shape the future of America and the world for decades to come. I believe that.
Yeah, and if you tell people that, and then you tell them democracy is going to end if Trump's elected, somebody's going to try to take Trump out.
All my soul. I know that millions of my fellow Americans believe it as well. and some have a different view as to the direction our country should take. Disagreement is inevitable in American democracy. It's part of human nature.
Disagreement is not part of human nature. I'm sorry. That would mean that God created human nature in a disordered fashion, which is certainly absurd. Disagreement is a result of original sin in the fall, not human nature.
But politics must never be a literal battlefield, and God forbid, a killing field. I believe politics ought to be an arena for peaceful debate, to pursue justice, to make decisions guided by the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. We stand for an America, not of extremism and fury, but of decency and grace. All of us now face a time of testing as the election approaches. And the higher the stakes, the more fervent the passions become. This places an added burden on each of us to ensure that no matter how strong our convictions, we must never descend into violence.
I got a question, honestly. Clearly, Biden thinks that there is room for violence in politics in some cases. Otherwise, he would never allow for war. Right? Right? If that's the case, if it's okay to go to war in some cases and interfere in the political structure and happenings of another nation, some people are going to ask, well, why can't we do that with our own nation? Now, I'm not saying that's right, but what I'm saying is some people are going to connect the dots and say, but wait, you're in favor of political violence in certain situations with other countries. So why can't we introduce that element into the United States to direct the political outcome here in the United States? Again, I'm not saying that's right, but that's an argument, and that's a dot that some people are going to connect.
Republican convention will start tomorrow. I have no doubt they'll criticize my record and offer their own vision for this country. I'll be traveling this week making the case for our record and the vision, my vision of the country, our vision. I'll continue to speak out strongly for our democracy, stand up for our Constitution and the rule of law, to call for action at the ballot box.
Has he really done that? How well has he really safeguarded the rule of law so far in light of all the wildness that we've seen in society in the last 4 years? How successful has he been there?
No violence on our streets. That's how democracy should work. We debate and disagree. We compare and contrast the character of the candidates, the records, the issues, the agenda, the vision for America. But in America, we resolve our differences at the battle box. You know, that's how we do it, at the battle box. Not.
All right, this is killing me. I got to hear that again. So, okay, we resolve our differences at the battle box. And then he says it again, the battle box is not a slip of the tongue. What's a battle box? I know a ballot box. I know what that is. I don't know what a battle box is. Help me out. Do y'all know what a battle box is?
Difference at the battle box. You know, that's how we do it, at the battle box, not with bullets.
I had to even Google it. Like, hey, you know, sometimes I'm just the ignorant one. So am I missing something here? Is there really such a thing as a battle box? I know what a ballot box is, but I've never heard of a battle box. But then again, I don't know everything. So maybe it's a real thing. So I tried to Google it and I couldn't find anything. So yeah, I don't think that there's a battle box out there. And again, it's not a slip of the tongue. It's not a one-time thing. He says it again twice. Listen to this.
In America, we resolve our differences at the battle box. You know, that's how we do it, at the battle box, not with bullets. The power to change America should always rest in the hands of the people, not in the hands of a would-be assassin. You know, the path forward through competing visions of the campaign should always be resolved peacefully, not through acts of violence.
See, I wonder if you were to like pull Biden to the side and ask him, okay, so Biden, are you telling me that if you had Hitler in the crosshairs, if you got him right there in the bullseye, you wouldn't take the shot to prevent all the atrocities that he will later on commit in life? if you could go back in time? You wouldn't do that? You would just say fight them in the battle box, whatever that is. That would be your suggestion? Or do you think that he would say, actually, well, it's kind of understandable if somebody takes the shot? Uh-huh. 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 See, that's exactly what's going on with the Trump issue. You've been telling everybody that this is a dictator who's going to destroy the Constitution and destroy democracy. So somebody is going to take you seriously and try to do that and try to take them out.
We're blessed to live in the greatest country on earth, and I believe that with every soul, every power of my being. So tonight, I'm asking every American to recommit, to make America, think about it. What's made America so special? Here in America, everyone must be treated with dignity and respect, and hate must
Everyone except, babies in the womb.
have no safe harbor. Here in America, we need to get out of our silos, where we only listen to those with whom we agree, where misinformation is rampant, where foreign actors fan the flames of our division to shape the outcomes consistent with their interests, not ours.
Foreign actors? Again, Biden has a hand in fanning the flames here. This is deflection.
Let's remember, here in America, while unity is the most elusive of goals right now, nothing is more important for us now than standing together.
And how well has Biden been at uniting this nation? I seem to recall a great deal of speeches on his part where he completely alienates a large portion of the nation and makes it very clear that he only stands with one group of people and he completely despises another. How well and effective has he been at uniting Americans whenever he alienates so many people who disagree with him?
We can do this. From the beginning, our founders understood the power of passion. So they created a democracy that gave reason and balance a chance to prevail over brute force. That's the American we must be. An American democracy where arguments are made in good faith. An American democracy where
Well, you can make the argument, but that doesn't mean that people are going to vote accordingly. Let's be honest. Your average voter, are they really voting based on how strong the arguments are? Or are they voting based on really superficial things like, well, this person is white, or this person is black, or this person is a female, or this person is a male? Are those primary factors for a lot of the voters? So this notion of democracy, it sounds nice when we speak of, we're ultimately going to fight these things out with arguments. Yeah, but most people who have the ability and a voice when it comes to electing the president and who vote, they're not considering those things. So how effective has democracy actually been?
the rule of law is respected. In American democracy, where decency, dignity, fair play aren't just quaint notions, but living, breathing realities. We owe that to those who come before us, to those who gave their lives for this country. We owe that to ourselves. We owe it to our children and our grandchildren. Look, let's never lose sight of who we are. Let's remember we are the United States of America. There is nothing beyond our capacity when we do it together. God bless you all. May God protect our troops.
It's a little weird that he wants to talk about God when he's not consistent with his own church. He claims to be a Catholic and yet completely violates what the Catholic Church teaches, especially when it comes to innocent human beings in the womb. So it's a little weird whenever I hear him even talk about God. It's like, why are you even doing this? Because you clearly don't take your own faith seriously. So let's talk a little bit about that, because I actually want to briefly pull up what the Vatican has said in response to this. But I also want to connect the dots to church politics here. We've constantly heard this rhetoric against Trump, seen a lot of fake news against Trump as well. Same applies to Pope Francis. There's a lot of fake news made about Pope Francis. A ton of it. A ton. I'll note, however, whenever you have fake news in the public about Trump, sometimes the news will come and set the record straight. In the case of Pope Francis, when you have fake news against him, almost never does the news in the people who bear false witness ever set the record straight. There's a huge difference there. But the same thing that happens to Trump when it comes to propaganda and fake news often happens to Pope Francis. Now, there's a lot of things that you could legitimately criticize about Trump. There's also things that you could legitimately criticize about Pope Francis. But most of the time, the legitimate criticisms against Trump and the legitimate criticisms against Pope Francis are not in scope. Most of the time, we're hearing propaganda and fake news, and that's an issue. But I also want to connect the dots and say, listen, if this kind of rhetoric that we've seen in politics can result in people attempting to assassinate Trump, don't you think that it could apply also to church politics? This kind of rhetoric where you have cardinals accusing the Pope of teaching heresy and saying he's trying to change everything and he's part of the Antichrist and he's trying to destroy Christianity. It's only a matter of time before somebody then tries to take the Pope out because of that. So I just want to connect that dot for you and say, this also is a very serious danger that we have over in the ecclesial realm with church controversies. And there's a real potential danger here. So those people who are fanning the flames against the Pope, if something ends up happening to the Pope, they have a share in that. They're not directly responsible, obviously, but they are indirectly responsible in fanning the flames. Because again, it's only a matter of time before somebody says, well, wait, if the Pope is part of the regime of the Antichrist, let me take him out. It's only a matter of time before some psycho does that. And that is horrible. It's wrong. But the people who are fanning the flames against the Pope are partly and indirectly responsible if that occurs. So this is something that we need to be aware of. Before we look at what the Vatican has said, though, about the situation with Trump, I do want to point this out from Elon Musk. He brought this up, and I thought it was helpful. He shows the kind of fake news and the spin that the media engaged in as soon as the issue about the shooting of Trump came out. And I want to connect the dots for you when it comes to the ecclesial realm as well. Here you see Washington Post. Trump escorted away after loud noises at PA rally. Yeah, that's one way to put it. Now, do you honestly mean to tell me the Washington Post did not have access to the live stream at the time that they wrote that headline? They couldn't go and just check the live stream real quick and see what happened? Or did they just rush to post something before they actually verified the information and then they put a spin on it? Clearly, it's the latter. ABC News, Donald Trump escorted off stage by Secret Service during rally after loud noises ring out of crowd. Yeah, that's one way to put it. Sure. NBC News, Secret Service rushes Trump off stage after popping noises heard at his Pennsylvania rally. Popping noises. So it's a firecracker, popping noise. Or I don't know. Maybe if you're cooking in, a pan full of oil, you can hear some popping noises there. Maybe this was somebody cooking near. They were engaging in a fish fry or something. Popping noises. Newsweek, MAGA responds with outrage after Donald Trump injured at Pennsylvania. Injured, yeah, injured. Kind of like you fall down like Biden falls down steps. Yeah, that's kind of what happened. He was injured. Look at this one from USA Today. Trump removed from stage by Secret Service after loud noises startles former president crowd. Yeah. Startled. CNN, Secret Service rushes Trump off stage after he falls at rally. That's probably the best one. That's probably the best one. Yeah, they rushed him off stage because he fell. He pulled a Biden. He was trying to go up the stairs and falls. And so, the Secret Service came and rushed him off stage. Do you seriously mean to tell me they could not pull up the live stream of the rally and just quickly see what did happen? So that tells you they're not verifying information and they're kind of putting a spin on thing and they're rushing to post stuff without really doing research. Does that sound familiar? Because that's exactly what the majority of news outlets, whether in the Catholic Church or outside of it, are doing about Pope Francis, as I've shown numerous times on this show. It's exactly what they're doing. In this case, though, Washington Post, NBC, ABC, Newsweek, CNN, USA Today, they've all modified their reporting to reflect that it was a result of a shooting, right? Mm-hmm. Do they do that about Pope Francis, though? When they spread propaganda about Pope Francis, do they ever update their information and say, hey, guys, we actually got it wrong? The Pope isn't talking about blessing gay unions. Here's what he's talking about. No, they don't do that. They just leave it out there. I have to point that out. The same stuff that is going on in the secular news is what's happening to Pope Francis. But at least in the secular news, they'll at least correct the record and set the record straight in some cases. Not all, but in some cases. Whereas they just won't do that with Pope Francis. So people end up having this view that he's this wild, liberal, communist Marxist. And it's just simply not true. All right. Let me share my screen and let's talk about the Vatican. The Vatican has condemned the violence against Trump. The Holy See has condemned acts of violence in the wake of the shooting that injured former U.S. President Donald Trump and others and left one dead at a campaign rally in Pennsylvania. A brief statement provided by CNA by Vatican spokesman Matteo Bruni on July 14th said the Holy See expressed concern about last night's episode of violence, which wounds people and democracy, causing suffering and death. The comment also said that the Holy See is united to the prayer of the United States bishops for America, for the victims, and for peace in the country, that the motives of the violent may prevail. So, okay. Might be important to maybe say a little bit more than that, but hey, I guess better than nothing. I will add one other thing. Pope Francis recently came out and emphasized Catholics need to be speaking up about politics and can't be silent about politics. So some people will ask me, well, Michael, why do you talk about some of this stuff? Just stick to theology. You're a theologian. I hate to break the news to you, but theology impacts politics. And even the Pope has recently come out and explicitly said Catholics need to be addressing the area of politics and can't be silent here. So, consider that. Thank you so much for the super chats. Y'all, media is controlled by, we can't talk about it. It's controlled by incompetent people. So thank you, Shalom. Biden mentions January 6th, overblown, and Whitmer hoax. Darth Inkling, in this day and age when American politics are discussed, you sadly see the worst of our culture. We turn into children. It's WWF level of engagement. Yeah. Allowing Biden to continue to speak is elder abuse. It's not believable. He can barely read the screen, Antonio says. And then Antonio again, media is controlled by, we can't talk about it. I think it's controlled by incompetent people. That's who it's controlled by. Incompetent and or disingenuous people. That's effectively it. Sometimes it's both. Sometimes it's one of the two. Anyways, I hope this was helpful. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Of course, check me out at patreon.com/reason and theology if you want to support this channel. We'll see you later. God bless.